things going on well financially, and for some reason your mental health is not in money that you have doesn't give you happiness. If you are having issues in your relationship, in your marriage, and for the children, if they're going through any form of trauma,
bullying in school,
due to any form of abuse, and they can't be happy. So no matter what you have, if your mental health is at stake, then your happiness is also at stake.
Okay, thank you very much, because she was actually so diplomatic at the beginning with it. What point can an individual ascertain to his or herself to say, I am happy, Mr. Ayo? Now, looking at, because she's talked about something, let's just dwell more on this happiness thing, because some happiness can come as a result of some other illicit things, some other, some illegal things. Some persons can, because of their mental sickness or whatever, one mental issue or the other, the opposite can happen, where somebody will go to the extreme to do something that is not legal to make them happy. So now, that's what I'm asking Mr. Ayo. I'm provoking this thought out now with us. Now, at what point can in a legal sense, right now, to say, I am happy?
Okay, thank you so much. She actually provoked my thoughts, to be honest. All right, so we are here to talk the talk, right?
Sure.
Yes, let's do the talk.
So when she said that, something, popped up on my mind. If I'm grieving, if I'm living with a particular mental illness, I can actually be happy everywhere, jumping here and there, everybody looking, oh, wow, I wish my life is like this. If you ask the person tells you, oh, I'm at my happiest moment. What I just described could be a symptoms in hypomania, right? So the person will tell you, I'm happy. Like, can't you see?
Yes.
See.
The vibe is there, the energy.
So
the third one, I've been sad for a long time. It got to a point I found a coping mechanism which may be healthy or not.
Unhealthy.
So let's for instance, I started taking substances to the extent that I took the substance for like 5 years ahead, and I even forgot why I started. And if you ask me now,
it's now
the happiest moment, right? So we have 3 different scenarios now. Let's go back to the grieving. When I'm saying loss, I'm not saying the sense of loss that brought about the grieving and bereavement concept could be the loss of a life or a loved one, and it could be something else. You could lose a relationship, you could lose a business, you could lose something. Great. When that person is grieving at that moment, and we can see it, considering other factors, we can actually say, okay, this is healthy way of grieving. Moment, I'm happy with the way the person is grieving because it's healthy. Now, with the other person that is coping with an artificial, unhealthy way, giving him or her artificial happiness, right? Are we really going to say that person is happy? The third one, that is happy that I link to possible symptoms of some of us that have diagnosis of bipolar. We may be on this side of the episode where we are on the hypomanic side. Even when you see someone in that phase, you will pray, God, give me this level of happiness, right?
Yeah.
So that thing called happiness, I would actually want us to go to well-being.
Well-being.
Right? I may be grieving at that moment. I'm psychologically healthy at that point, and I can bring my happiness from that source. So how can we really say someone is happy? There are some things that you can properly explain them as an outsider, because the best person that can give you, in some situation, the best picture of it is the main person. Right?
It's the individual.
Is the main person
Yes.
in some situation. But when it comes to unhealthy situation, where the person is living with a particular mental health issue, it now comes to the job of people around, professionals, to determine that.
Okay.
Let's come to just a minute.
Okay.
Let's come to ourselves. Let's not talk about illnesses.
Yeah.
I derive pleasure. If I'm the type that if you don't do things the way I want it, then you're messing things up. So the only thing that makes me happy, which may be the wrong way, is if you do it my own
Your
way.
way.
So even if she's doing it the right way, she's doing it the right way. If they are not doing it the right way to
If
me,
they are not doing it your way,
Your own.
Yeah, wait.
it's an off.
so the
Becomes a
question
problem.
can really place answer on it.
Okay. Now, audience, look at what just happened. So I asked my experts the question and they referred it back to me. Now I'm going to say.
I think I do have something to add.
Now I'm going to let me say let me add a little insight to that as well. To me, I think he said it. It should be all about mental well-being rather than the outward happiness, the physical expression of happiness of every individual. Because happiness can come through different means or through different forms or via different substances, like we have just talked about now. I can be happy because I just ate my best food right now, but that doesn't mean that I am mentally stable or I am emotionally or psychologically okay today. I can be having something and an alert just hits. So at that moment, I'm on top of the world, like I'm a jolly fellow, right? But what happens after the money is gone? You know, for some of us, once the payday comes and you just withdraw everything and you put it at the back pocket, you know, and you're spending, the thing is reducing, you're spending.
reducing.
So you get somewhere, maybe in Ground Square or next cash and carry or whatever, then you want to pay and it's just remaining 2 papers right there. And the whole thing changes. So what I'm saying is, I really am of the opinion that mental well-being should be tagged based on the individual resolve to be okay, not the external factors such as alert, financial, stability, spiritual highness, and all of that. All right, just so we pass. But there's something else that is really bothering me, which I'm going to ask next. I'm going to start that with you. How do we really manage? Because one of the things that is really causing some of these mental illnesses in Nigeria is the career, the age that we are in, the tech age. You know, people trying to get things done. Right now, according to statistics, we have more female operating startups companies than the male counterparts. So we're having people going out there. The competition is more right now in our age. You know, people want to make it. You know, they're having IG stuff. Now it is social media marketing and all of that. People just want to get things done. People want to, how will I put it right now? Put their name in the sand of times and all of that. But how do we balance all of this? I'm asking balance our mental health and our career, even though we're still pursuing it and all of that.
I think first things first is that we need to know that mental health issues, discussions, and conversations should now be, right? It's no longer something we need to start, hiding. I'm glad so many people are talking about mental health now, so it's kind of making it easy, and so many people are now becoming more aware of, perhaps what it feels like to be depressed, or, what they should look out for, perhaps, so they can start looking out for help. But even when they see that, are they ready? Again, when you talk about work-life balance or career and the competitive age that we find ourselves in, you'd realize that there's something that happened in 2020, and that was that, in 2020, so many people who were used to working in a conventional workspace had to work at home.
Yeah.
For some of us who were family people, who were kids around, it became very difficult because you're on Zoom meeting and you're like, and there's all of that and all of that. And there's so many reasons. So now, right now, people are struggling to actually differentiate between work, life. It's a whole lot.
It's a whole
lot to deal with. And so when you realize employee mental health and well-being should now become a budget line. Businesses, whether you're even a startup or not, it's so important. And I also think that, with that also, there should be support groups, right, in organizations, whereby they are actively supporting each other to be mentally well. Because again, if you're not mentally well, how do they perform on their job? How do they perform on their job, basically? So, tying that around to being happy and perhaps being fulfilled, we still go back to what people feel or things makes them happy. I like how you talked about the money part, that's the temporary happiness. And for me, I always like to reiterate that happiness is not in things, places, or people. And it's not something that you attach to something else. Because the moment you attach it to something else, like, it basically gave that, the drug, the person abusing drug, and the person that is, grieving and all of that. And then it's not something you attach to things or to people. Because the moment you do that, once that thing is not there, you're sinking. So it's a decision. And being happy and being unhappy, they're states of mind.
I agree.
And because
with you.
they're states of mind, the first solution cannot be found outside of the mind. First in the mind. And that's why mental health is important.
Good. Now, I agree with you because you answered my question in your first minute. And she talked about organizations having, for instance, we have it in here.
Mental health and well-being.
Wellness
budget
centers.
Line. Yes.
Okay.
Most big conglomerates, they do have, these big HROs who take care, and all of that. So she's also proposing that organizations also should have like wellness centers. Instead of training people on communications, training people on capacity development and all of that, like can you bring them in maybe once in a year or once in the same way you also urge people urge their staff, okay, go for checkups and all of that. Can people check up their mental state? So that is what she's proposing, which I think is very, very wonderful. Now, I'm going to ask you, Sarima.
Okay.
Personally tell us how, now looking at your own example, give us an example of how you balance your work at Shecheyera Foundation and also your personal life. We understand that you have your personal things, the personal things you do, and of course your work path. How do you balance these things? Just quickly, please.
Okay, you said quickly, so it's a question that I get most of the time, even from my colleagues. Sometimes they just come in, Sarima, are you okay? How do you balance your work and life? To be honest, if I want to be honest, it wasn't always easy. In the beginning, I used to go back home with work. I'd literally dream about, especially when I have had a session with a 3-year-old who has been sexually abused, like a couple of times, the child is sick and all of that. Help me, tell me how I'm supposed to separate. I had to start understanding that in order for me to be effective in my job, I needed to take care of myself, because the only way I can take care of the people I care about is when I am also stable. Because of course there's secondary trauma, there's vicarious trauma. So do I want to be in a place where I am so helpless that I am unable to help these people? So what I started doing was I started discovering things about me that I had neglected, especially my social life. I realized that when I got home, it was a different time. I need to understand that the moment I take off my shoes and take off my jacket, I am home. And being home means this is me time. If I have to see a movie or do anything that I have to do to separate myself from work, because in the bid of taking care of other people, I also need to take care of myself.
Correct.
So I started engaging in activities that would help me. Sometimes weekends I also
go outside, just have fun. Now, your separation you're talking about right now is, the mental separation.
Both mentally and physically, I have to try to do that. It is not easy, I must say, because sometimes when I tell people this, they're like, it's not easy. I get emails like 12 p.m. How do I tell my boss that I will not respond? But the truth is, if you do respond to that mail, you will still wake up at 5 and still go to the same office. If you don't respond, you will wake up at 5 and still go to the same office. That challenge will still be there and you still have to solve it. So why not do you? And then after that moment, once it's your 6 to 5 a.m., you do 5 p.m., you do the work.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you very much for that. I enjoy the part where you talked about the separation. Separating both mentally and physically. For some of us who still take jobs home, and like you said, the email. So for so those of us who have our email, connected to our phones. So okay, yeah, you can just hold it. You can just hold it. Okay, so for those of us who still have our email, emails connected to our phones, you still just see things drop in that you need to, attend to immediately.
Turn off notifications.
Exactly. So you turn off the notification and the calls start coming in. What do you do at that
So
point?
I had to intentionally separate my personal phone from my official
So
phone.
do you switch off your phone when you get home?
I don't. I put it on vibration and most of the time silence. And of course, when there's crisis, as far as someone is not dying, I am not responding to that phone. And that is because, and then of course I have clients that have access to my personal number. So when they're having, I make it clear from the first time we meet, I tell you, except there's crisis, this is my work hour. And they respect that. It's just so difficult for us to communicate our boundaries to people because we're more concerned about how they're going to feel. But the truth is, a lot of people want you to communicate your boundaries to them. And it would surprise you that they would respect it.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Yes, I think it's
Thank you very
important that
much.
we communicate that.
Thank you very much. I've learned a lot. Thank you. Now, Mr. Ayo, please briefly, tell us your own experience or the trick that works for you. How do you balance your career, your side hustles, and your personal life, your person?
Okay. Listening to her is giving me a different perspective anyways. But my own is on the go self-care. That's for me. Because maybe it's the nature of our own establishment or the kind of patients we deal with. I had to leave my house around 2 a.m.
Wow.
to see a client before.
Patient, yeah.
Funny enough, my phone is always on. But in my therapy room, when you enter the place, you will not think it's a therapy room anyway. I can decide to lie down and be sleeping for like another 20 minutes. So I give the space like that, right? And there's some patient that they just call you, like you have a patient that is struggling with addiction. Basically, let's talk about crack, which you see personal phone, business one, they just need help at that moment. And if they don't get that help, that is the beginning of the relapse. And if the person has been struggling for 5, 10 years, a call can save. So for me, that was why I said, oh, she's giving me a new perspective to it. I do on-the-go self-care. Right.
Okay, so the on-the-go you just talked about is even on the daily, while it's ongoing,
While I'm
sometimes
work,
you're taking a nap or you're
while
just
I'm at work, I
zoning off?
structure the session as
Okay.
much as I can. I
Okay.
can get to work around 9, I can get to work 8.
Okay,
I can leave the office around 4, I can leave the office around 7.
okay.
But the structure is my own personal self-care structure is already inside.
In between.
Awesome.
So
I like that.
Awesome.
I can't
I
even
love
take
that.
that.
Like this is the first time I am hearing this.
Just
The
in,
very
in hits.
exactly. So with what he's saying right now, I'm getting the new notion of while you're going about your daily hustle, get that separation in your head that I am a human being
Yes, you are.
and I'm going for a walk.
I'm just a human being.
Yes, I'm just a human being. Okay, then I'm going for a walk. So you have a career, but you're first a human being. You should be well for you to attend that office or whatever, or go to the office, right? So even while you're for some persons who can't, who will not be successful in her own suggestions, right? So you have to adopt his own, which is while you are there at your place of work or while you are combining things together, have time for your mental health. Have times when you be like, you know what, I've been on this system, I've been on this task for the past 3 hours. I'm just going to take a recess, go for a break for 15 minutes, 20 minutes,
Exactly.
then you come back to work. Now, what that does is that it even gives you a fresher way of thinking, of style, or result when you're back. Or you can even go and have a nap during your break. Or sometimes you just have a nap for like 30 minutes straight or 40 minutes straight, then you come back to the office.
If actually that 40 minutes it's available. So sorry to cut in there, right? Like I said, I work when I'm working with clients. Skill that works, healthy coping skill that works for Mr. A might not work for Mr. B.
Correct.
For instance, I can't sleep while at work, no matter how hard I try. even when I'm trying to like just shut my eyes, I'm like, okay, I have the next session, I need to prep. Even if it's 1 hour in between or 2 hours in between, I can't take that break, right? But what I'm trying to, like I've had a client who was having panic attack. I think it was about 2 a.m. or thereabout, and the parents tried to reach me, and the first time it happened, I picked up when I saw the call because I knew it wasn't for them to call at that time. It was something more. But after our next session, the next time it happened, they called and I wasn't available to pick the call. I was very, very glad when we met, and she said, when I called and you weren't available, it dawned on me that the reason I've been attending sessions is because all this while, all we've been doing is to help me help myself. And she utilized the coping skills, and she was happy that, for her, she was happy I didn't pick the call. She said if I had picked the call, she wouldn't have been able to know how to help herself. But because I wasn't on call, she was able to utilize. In fact, even her mom had to learn, and
Awesome.
they did it together.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
good. You had to come up and clear yourself.
Yes.
That's good. From Ayo's allegations. And of course, you thought he was having misconceptions, but trust me, I understood what Ayo said. Because he said it at the beginning, the open of this
Yeah.
second statement now, that, different things, different sizes for different
Yes,
individuals.
exactly.
What works for me may not actually work for you.
for you.
And I love the fact that yours is working for you. You have identified what is working for you.
For me.
Now, that is what is going to bring me to the next question, Ayo. I'm going to ask, you talked about addiction, for instance. We may have some patients here in the audience, or people who are watching live, because this is being streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and of course, Instagram as well. What coping mechanism can, for instance, of course, I know the last goal is they must have to get to meet with a therapist, but what are other coping mechanisms that you can give out right now to people who are addicted, who are down with drugs?
Okay, thank you so much. I think we should start from, do I even agree that I'm addicted to a substance?
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Acceptance.
So that's the first one.
Please say that again, maybe louder.
Yeah.
Okay, do I agree, or do I as substance alone?
Maybe
Can
just
be a
be behavior,
A
pattern.
behavior.
Right, thank you. So if you've been doing something and you find it difficult to stop, or you have lost control over that, if you are having disturbing, intrusive thoughts about that particular thing, and at that point that you may even find it difficult to control that thought. Second, number 3 is, if you know that engaging in that behavior is having a negative effect or impact, or is